Disney World gets 57 million visitors a year. It's the most visited theme park on the planet. And inside it, right now, today, there's a place where a child died, where the water that killed him still flows, where the rides that ran the day it happened are still standing exactly as they were left. Nobody demolished it. Nobody cleared it out. Nobody explained it. Disney just walked away. And for 24 years, it's been sitting there, inside the happiest place on Earth. River Country opened in 1976. For 25 years, millions of families made it part of their Disney trip. Kids grew up riding those slides every summer. Parents have photos from that beach they still keep in albums today. Then one summer, a child went into that water and didn't come back. And here's what most people don't know. It didn't happen once. Today, we're covering the full story of River Country, how Disney built it, what they knew about that water from the very beginning, and the decision they made, twice, to keep those gates open anyway. Because by the end of this video, I'll tell you about the second death, the one that happened 18 years after the first, the one Disney was even quieter about, and then I'll show you why. Right now, today, the park is still standing inside Walt Disney World, exactly as it was left. Disney has never explained that, not once, and that silence is the most disturbing part of this entire story. To understand what River Country was, you have to go back to 1976. America was still shaking off Watergate. The economy was rough. Trust in institutions was at a generational low. Families weren't looking for spectacle. They were looking for something that felt real, something warm, something that didn't ask anything of them except to show up and enjoy it. Walt Disney had been dead for 10 years, but the company he built was moving fast. Walt Disney World had opened in 1971, and by the mid-70s, the suits in Burbank were expanding the property aggressively. New hotels, new attractions, new reasons to stay longer and spend more. But somewhere inside that expansion, someone remembered what Walt actually wanted. Not just rides, not just fantasy, something natural. Walt had always talked about it, a place that felt like the American outdoors, like Tom Sawyer's River, like rope swings and muddy banks, and the kind of summer afternoon that stays with you for the rest of your life. On June 20th, 1976, that idea became real. River Country opened inside Fort Wilderness Campground. And it wasn't like anything Disney had built before. It wasn't like anything anyone had built before. This was one of the first themed water parks in the entire country. On opening weekend, more than 12,000 people came through the gates. The Tampa Tribune called it the water hole Walt would have wanted. And the concept was genuinely clever. Disney didn't build a water park. They built a swimming hole, Bay Lake, a real natural Florida lake sitting right on Disney property, fed directly into the attraction. You weren't swimming in a chlorinated pool with painted concrete walls. You were swimming in actual Florida water. Filtered and treated, yes, but connected to the land. Alive. The kind of water that had a temperature and a smell and a feeling that no theme park engineer could manufacture. There were rope swings hanging off real trees. There was a 330-foot winding water slide called Whoopin' Holler Hollow, a 16-foot drop at the bottom that made grown adults scream. There were inner tube rapids, a white sand beach, a whole section called Ol' Swimmin' Hole that looked like it had been lifted straight out of a Mark Twain novel and dropped into Central Florida. Kids lost entire days in that place. Parents sat on the beach and watched and didn't check their watches. Families came back the next summer, and the summer after that. By every account from the people who were actually there, River Country didn't feel like a product. It felt like a place. And that's exactly what made what happened next so hard to explain. But here's something most people who visited River Country never knew. Disney wasn't fully treating that water. Bay Lake wasn't a closed system. It wasn't a giant chlorinated pool with a Disney paint job on the walls. It was a real, living Florida lake, with real Florida biology inside it. Microorganisms, naturally occurring bacteria, everything that exists in open freshwater that's been sitting in a subtropical climate for thousands of years. Disney ran it through filtration, but they didn't fully chlorinate it, and that wasn't an oversight. That was a selling point. The natural water quality was part of the marketing, part of the experience. The whole reason it felt different from every other water park was because it was different. It was real. And Disney leaned into that. What they didn't put in the brochure was what else was living in that water. That detail matters, because in 1980, something came through those gates that no filtration system caught. And what happened that summer didn't just change river country. It exposed a decision Disney had been making since the very first day those gates opened. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what this place looked like at its absolute peak. Because you can't understand how far it fell until you understand how good it actually was. Throughout the late 1970s and into the 1980s, River Country wasn't just a water park. It was the best part of a Disney trip for a lot of families. Not the castle, not the fireworks. Picture it at its peak. A Saturday in July, 1983. The Florida sun is already brutal before 9 a.m. Families are filing through the gates, kids already pulling at their parents' arms before they've even found a spot to put their towels. The smell of sunscreen and cut grass hanging in the air. And the sound of it, kids screaming, water hitting water, the long wooden creak of rope swings launching out over the lake and the splash that came a second later. At full capacity, River Country held 5,000 guests, and on summer weekends, they hit that number. Every inner tube on the rapids had someone in it. Every rope swing had a line stretching back 20 people. The white sand beach was packed shoulder to shoulder. Whoop and Holler Hollow, that 330-foot winding slide with a 16-foot drop at the bottom, had kids riding it over and over until their legs gave out. First-timers would stand at the top, look down, and genuinely hesitate. Then they'd go, and immediately get back in line. There was a waterfall you could swim behind. Raft Rider Ridge had speed slides that hit the water so fast it knocked the breath out of you. Pop's Place had corn dogs, soft serve, and cold drinks. And on a July afternoon in Florida, that soft serve line was as long as anything in Magic Kingdom. And all of it, every inch of it, sat inside a frame of cypress trees and Spanish moss. Real Florida wilderness. The kind that had been there long before Disney bought the land, and will be there long after the last theme park closes. It made the whole place feel like it belonged to the earth somehow, like Disney had found it rather than built it. One former guest, writing on a Disney fan forum years later, put it simply, "It felt like the woods belonged to us." That's the thing about River Country that's almost impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there. It didn't feel like a product. It didn't feel engineered. It felt like a memory. The specific kind you don't know you're making until 20 years later when something reminds you of it, and it hits you harder than you expected. Families came back every summer. Kids who rode those slides in 1979 brought their own kids back in 1993. It had that kind of pull. And while all of that was happening, while 5,000 people a day were laughing and splashing and making memories they'd carry for the rest of their lives, something was already living in that water. It had been there the whole time. But there was a problem. One that had been sitting inside that water since the very first day River Country opened. Most people have never heard of Naegleria fowleri. You'd remember it if you had. It's a single-celled amoeba. It lives in warm, still, freshwater environments. Exactly the kind that exists in a natural Florida lake in the middle of summer. It doesn't make you sick if you swallow it. It doesn't enter through your skin. It enters through your nose, travels up through the nasal cavity, reaches the brain. Then it starts eating. The infection it causes has a fatality rate of over 97%. By the time symptoms appear, it's almost always too late. And Naegleria fowleri was living in Bay Lake. In the summer of 1980, an 11-year-old boy named Michael Howell visited River Country with his family. He swam in that water, did everything kids did there, rope swings, slides, splashing around in the lake. Days later, he was sick. Then he was in the hospital. On July 8, 1980, Michael Howell died. The The cause was confirmed. Primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, traced directly to Bay Lake. The Florida Division of Health investigated. The link was established. It was real, it was documented, and it was unambiguous. Disney quietly settled with the family. Then they reopened River Country. No public announcement, no press release, no changed water system. The park kept drawing directly from Bay Lake. The same lake, the same water, the same microorganisms still living in it. Families kept coming through those gates all summer. Kids kept jumping off those rope swings into that lake. And not one of them was told what had happened. Not one of them was told what was still in that water. The state of Florida didn't mandate additional filtration requirements at the time. Disney wasn't legally forced to do anything differently, so they didn't. And for 18 more years, that's exactly how it stayed. Then 1998 arrived. A second guest contracted Naegleria fowleri at River Country, another confirmed case, another death. The details were kept even quieter than the first. No public statement from Disney, no acknowledgement, just silence. The same silence they'd used in 1980 and apparently decided worked just fine. Two people, same water, same park, same company. By the late 1990s, River Country was struggling for other reasons too. Disney had opened Typhoon Lagoon in 1989. Massive, modern, with a wave pool that could hold thousands. Then Blizzard Beach in 1995, with the tallest freefall water slide in the world at the time. Both parks were everything River Country wasn't. Sleek, enormous, built for the era. River Country's rustic charm, the thing that had made it feel special in 1976, now just made it feel small. Attendance was dropping every year. Maintenance costs kept climbing. The natural aesthetic that guests once loved now looked worn, tired, old. The rope swings were still there. The cypress trees were still there. But the families weren't coming the way they used to. 2 deaths, 2 decades of silence, a water system that hadn't fundamentally changed since opening day. And now the numbers were turning against it too. The cracks weren't spreading anymore. The whole thing was coming apart. Most people who tell this story stop here. They say River Country got replaced, that Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach made it obsolete, that it was a business decision. Old park, declining numbers, cut your losses and move on. Clean, simple, makes sense. But that's not the full story. Because while attendance was dropping and the new parks were pulling crowds, Disney was also sitting on something they'd never told the public. 2 confirmed deaths, a known pathogen living in their water, an open lake system they hadn't fundamentally changed in 25 years, and a paper trail connecting all of it directly back to them. Then September 11th happened. Park attendance dropped across the board. Every theme park in America took a hit that fall. And Disney made a decision. River Country closed on September 1st, 2001. Quietly. No farewell season, no final weekend. No explanation given to the public, to the press, or to the thousands of families who'd been coming there every summer for a quarter century. They just closed it. And what happened next? What Disney did with that park after they shut those gates is the part of this story that almost nobody talks about. Disney's official statement was one sentence. River Country was closing indefinitely due to declining attendance. That was it. The staff found out days before the public. Some had worked there 15 years. They cleared their lockers and left. The gates were chained on September 1st, 2001, and then nothing. No demolition, no renovation, no sale. Disney just walked away. The lounge chairs stayed where they were. The inner tubes stayed stacked by the lake. The signs stayed up. Inside Pop's place, the cash registers sat on the counter, drawers still open. Then Florida started taking it back. Vines consumed the changing rooms. Trees pushed through the concrete. The white sand beach turned to mud. The rope swings rotted off their branches and fell into the water below. The paint on Whoopin' Holler Hollow peeled off in long strips and dropped into the black water pooling at the bottom. 1 year passed, then 5, then 10, then 20. Half a mile from Magic Kingdom, behind the tree line, decomposing in silence. Urban explorers slipped past the fencing in the 2000s. The photos spread fast. Journalists reached out to Disney for comment. Disney declined, every time. In 2019, they filed plans to redevelop the site, a resort called Reflections. People assumed the ruins would finally come down. Then 2020 hit. COVID, budget cuts. Reflections was canceled. The ruins are still there today. And remember what I told you at the start, that Disney has never explained why they left it exactly as it was? They don't leave things alone. They demolish, they renovate. Every square foot of that property makes money. Leaving a decomposing water park untouched for 24 years isn't neglect. That's a decision. Today, River Country is an overgrown plot sitting inside one of the most meticulously maintained properties on Earth. 20 feet off a walking trail, behind a chain-link fence, returning to the ground. River Country lasted 25 years. It's been closed for 24. And the people who loved it most, the families who made it part of every Disney trip, the kids who rode Whoop and Holler Hollow until their legs gave out. They're in their 50s and 60s now. Some of them are grandparents. The place they remember is gone, but the bones of it are still there, exactly where they left them. Two families remember it differently than everyone else. A boy who went in that water in 1980 and never came home. Another guest in 1998. Same water, same park, same silence from the company that owned it. Disney has never had to answer for that publicly, not once. And that's what separates River Country from every other abandoned place. It's not forgotten, it's ignored, deliberately, by the most powerful entertainment company in the world. A company that controls the story of everything inside those gates, and has chosen, for 24 years, to say absolutely nothing about what's rotting behind the trees. That silence has its own weight. River Country isn't the only one. Across America right now, there are places just like it, once loved, quietly closed, never explained, sitting behind fences while the world walks past. The next one I'm covering is bigger than River Country, more beloved, and the real reason it closed was buried for 30 years before anyone found it. You can watch that one right now, links on screen. And if you remember River Country, or somewhere like it that's just gone now, tell me in the comments. I read every one.